Good evening and welcome into Sports Talk on a Budget. It is October 7th, year of our Lord 2024. Going to start to try to do little things differently here. Going to try to do 2 episodes a week, a little bit shorter episodes. One would be more of a reaction, one earlier in the week to what I saw on the weekend from the NFL and college football. And then later in the week, kind of a shorter episode previewing and picking the top games in both the NFL and college football. But going to try this here. So today is obviously Monday, October 7th, like I said. Before I go ahead and get into the show, just want to go ahead and say, if you like the video version, please like and subscribe right down here to YouTube under Sports Talk on a Budget. And if you like the audio version, you can find it basically wherever you get your podcasts under Sports Talk on a Budget, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, basically wherever you get your podcasts, you can find it there. Thank you, and let's go ahead and dive into the topics. So really just 2 topics today, just going to be more of a reaction to what I saw from both college football and the NFL. Wild weekend in both. Wild weekend in both sports. Unbelievably wild weekend in college football. We'll start off with that. That'll be my first topic today. Just a crazy volcanic weekend in college football. Upsets galore, close games galore. We were told it was kind of a sleepy slate on Saturday. Not a great slate of college football games on Saturday. And usually when you hear that, that's when you see upsets happen, and that is exactly what happened this Saturday. So that'll be the first topic. Second topic is going to move to the NFL. My Week 5 NFL reaction is going to react to some of the top games and some of the top performances that I saw yesterday in the NFL, and just kind of give you my take on all of that. There was some interesting ways that games ended, both in the NFC and AFC, so we'll get into that definitely as well. But let's go ahead and move to our first topic, and that is going to be college football. And just listen to this. 5 of the top 11 teams in college football were upset to unranked opponents on Saturday. That is number 1, Alabama, losing on the road at Vanderbilt. Number 4, Tennessee, losing on the road at Arkansas. Number 9, Missouri, getting hammered on the road in College Station against Texas A&M. Number 10, Michigan, going on the road in the national championship rematch to Washington, to Seattle, to play the Huskies, losing there. And then, unfortunately, at number 11, my USC Trojans, going on the road to Minnesota and losing to Minnesota. But let's go ahead and start off with the number 1 team, and that's Alabama. Alabama's coming off, of course, that huge victory 2 weeks ago at home over Georgia, where they took that early lead. Then Georgia storms back, takes the lead. Alabama scores on that unbelievable play by Ryan Williams, one of the best plays I've seen ever, basically. And then they get the interception in the end zone to close out the game against Georgia. They totally sleptwalked into that game against Vanderbilt. Totally could tell they took them lightly. Totally could tell they thought they'd walk in. This is Vandy. We're double-digit favorites. We're going to walk out with the win no matter how we play. And Vanderbilt not only went down the field and scored right away, they got a pick 6. And right from the jump, we were early in the first quarter, it was 13-0 Vanderbilt. And, I mean, Alabama was on their heels. And I wasn't even really paying attention to this game. I kind of just was going to keep an eye out on my phone. And then I was watching the Georgia-Auburn game, and on the bottom ticker, it's 13-0 Vanderbilt over Alabama. And it's like, holy crap. So I switch over to that game, and Vanderbilt came to play, of course. Vanderbilt came to play. This wasn't like a high turnover game where Alabama had a lot of turnovers and the games ends up being 17-14 Vanderbilt wins. They don't really have a great offensive performance, but they got the turnovers, they got short fields and drove, and they just got all the breaks. That wasn't the kind of game. Vanderbilt dropped 40 on this Alabama team. They won 40-35. Diego Pavia, their transfer quarterback from New Mexico State, he played great. Their offense was able to do what they wanted to do with that triple option, kind of just had Alabama mesmerized the entire game. But the question for Alabama going forward is this defense. This defense gave up just a ton of yards, of course, to Georgia a couple weeks ago, and they haven't been great all season. Their offense has been able to overcome it and get them a huge lead so they can kind of not play their best, but teams get really one-dimensional when they get behind. But they fell behind early to Vanderbilt, and their defense is not used to playing from behind. So when they fell behind early to Vanderbilt, they were out of place on defense. They weren't in the right spots. They were missing tackles. Very, very, very sloppy performance by by Alabama on the defensive side, and it was evident right from the jump. And a lot of people are asking the question, would Nick Saban lose that game? And it's probably no, because Nick Saban, the entire time that Nick Saban was at Alabama, Vanderbilt scored a total of 13 points against Alabama. They had 13 points like 5 minutes into the game against this new Alabama team. Now, I'm not calling, obviously, for Kalen DeBoer's head. I think he's a really good coach, and I really like the direction of Alabama. But this was a wake-up call for them. They got to be better on the defensive side. They got to kind of, you can't just walk into any stadium anymore with the transfer portal and how these rosters are being built with NIL as well. They're going to be a lot more tougher games, even in lower competition in your own conference. You can't just walk into any stadium, just waltz in there and get a victory. And that's exactly what Alabama looked like they thought they could do on Saturday. So hats off to Vanderbilt. They played great. Like I said, dropping 40 on Alabama. It wasn't like they just, barely won because they got all the turnovers and got short fields. No, Vanderbilt came to play. They looked great. They put it to Alabama all game. Were able to salt away the game with 2 first downs on that last drive. Great job by Vanderbilt. Next one I want to look at is Tennessee and Arkansas. And that one, I believe, ended up being 19-17, I believe, or 19-13. So Arkansas upsets Tennessee at home. Tennessee is a team, I said earlier in the season that I think their top end, their highest potential, their ceiling might be higher than any team in the country, maybe outside of Ohio State and Texas, because of Nico Iamaleava and his potential. He hasn't reached that potential yet. He had a rough game Saturday night against Arkansas, and he hasn't played that great this season. He's played well in spots and plays, and you can see the talent that he has in certain plays and certain kind of drives. But in totality, Nico Iamaleava has not played well. You saw a lot of growing pains Saturday night. They ended the half where he could have gotten them more points and he ran out the clock. And then they play at the end of the game. You don't even throw the ball to the end zone to see if you have a chance with one of your wide receivers. You run past the line of scrimmage and run out of bounds after the clock has already hit 0. That was definitely a young player's mistake. He's a redshirt freshman, not a true freshman. He was on that roster last year. He was a part of that team last year, so he's not a true freshman. So it's a big difference now. I know a lot of people are trying to give him passes, but he has been a part of that program for a year and a half now. And I think he's going to be a really good player. And like I said, you could see the talent and potential just oozing out of him in a lot of plays, but still, he's not there yet. And if he can't be closer to his potential than he is right now, this Tennessee team may not be a national title contender. They're great on defense, great defensive line, good in the back end, but their offense has really sputtered. I mean, they didn't play well against Oklahoma. Oklahoma just played terrible. They didn't play well last night. They've played well in spots, but NC State's a terrible team. They played Kent State, who's a terrible team. So this Tennessee team, it'll be interesting. Them and Alabama play on the 19th, so 2 weeks from now, basically, or a week and a half from now. That'll be a very interesting game for both teams because both teams are flawed. Tennessee, I think, is flawed on the offensive side right now, and Alabama is flawed on the defensive side right now. That'll be an interesting game. But hats off to Arkansas. Huge win. Arkansas is a good team. They're 4-2, could definitely be 5-1. They gave away a game earlier in the season against Oklahoma State. 2 weeks ago, they gave Texas A&M all they could handle in Dallas at Jerry's World for that game. So they're a very good team. They're going to be a sneaky team and a tough team to beat. And an SEC team can't just roll in there. I don't care if you're Georgia, Bama, Tennessee, LSU. You can't just roll into Arkansas anymore and expect a W. They're here to stay, kind of like Vandy is as well. I believe in Arkansas a little bit more than Vandy, though. And then we'll get to the 2 Big Ten teams. We're going to start off with Michigan at Washington. Now, Washington was a 2.5-point favorite in this game, so it's not exactly an upset. And Michigan looks like they may have found their quarterback of the future in Jack Tuttle when he came in kind of midway through the second quarter there. The offense with Alex Orji was going nowhere. It was stuck in mud. They were able to kind of catch USC off guard the first time they tried that, and USC had no game plan because they didn't know. But since then, they got shut down in the second half against Minnesota, and then in the first quarter and half of the second quarter, Washington shut down that offense as well. So They couldn't go along with that anymore. Jack Tuttle gave them a little bit more juice, but still not a great offense. They don't have great weapons on the outside of wide receiver. Doesn't matter who plays quarterback. And their defense is not nearly as good as they were last year. They have two good defensive tackles in Kenneth Graham and Mason Grants and Mason Grants and Kenneth Graham, two NFL defensive tackles there, but their back end outside of Will Johnson is not very good and can be susceptible to the pass. We saw that with USC 3 weeks ago, with Minnesota last week, and with this week with Will Rogers in Washington. So they're susceptible there. And this Michigan team, we're just going to have to face the facts that they're probably going to be a 4 or 5 loss team. They still got Oregon and Ohio State on the schedule. They could lose those games. They still got to go at Indiana, who's a 6-0 team. So that's going to be a tough one, and they probably didn't think it was going to be a tough one to start the season. So it's going to be a long year for Michigan. I think they could be a 4 or 5 loss team. Probably still a bowl team, but it's still going to be a long year for them. And definitely not what they were expecting coming off of a national championship, but it's going to be a long year. But hats off to Washington. You get that victory. You get at home. You get back on track. I thought they should have won 2 weeks ago on the road at Rutgers, but gave that game away with missed field goals and just kind of bonehead plays. But this is a team that's getting better, and Jed Fish is a hell of a coach. He's getting this team better week in and week out, and they're continuing to improve. They're going to be a tough out, and they're going to be a tough team in the Big Ten. And going forward under Jed Fish, they're going to be a tough out going forward as well. So hats off to Washington. And now let's get to a game I did not want to talk about, but unfortunately I have to, and that is USC going on the road to Minnesota and losing 24-17. And USC, just like in the Michigan game, had a drive to put this game away and messed it up. In the Michigan game, they got the ball with about a little more than 5 minutes left on the clock. They ran the ball once, took it down to under 5. Then they threw like a pitch pass and a screen. Both fell on the ground in running more time. Gave Michigan the ball with over 4 minutes so they could run their full offense. We know what happened. Khalil Mullings happened, and Michigan went down and scored, and that was the game. USC had the ball about basically midway through the fourth quarter. They were up 17-10. They were driving. They were running the ball down Minnesota's throat on this drive. Minnesota couldn't shut down Woody Marks in that run game, and they get to a 3rd and 4 at about the 35-yard line of Minnesota. So you're sort of already in field goal range, and we saw Michael Lance, the kicker for USC, make a 50-plus yarder to end the half in the first half. So you know you're in his field goal range. It's 3rd and 4. Hindsight, yes, I would have ran the ball with Woody Marks. If you don't get the first down, maybe you go for it on a short 4th down, or you kick the field goal, you go up 10, and you probably ice the game away at that point, because I don't think Minnesota was coming back from 10 points with about 6-7 minutes left in the quarter. But they call a pass play, which is fine. The right tackle, Mason Murphy, it was a 3-man rush. The right tackle, Mason Murphy, whiffed totally on the defensive end. He basically hits Miller Moss and comes in on Miller Moss untouched almost, just kind of touched a little bit by Mason Murphy to slow him down just a little bit. While Miller Moss is trying to throw the ball goes up in the air, Minnesota intercepts the ball. That was the game changer right there. Minnesota, from that possession that they just got, went down, scored a touchdown. USC gets the ball back, sputters on offense. Minnesota gets the ball back, scores a touchdown. We could argue about if it really was a touchdown. It looked like he may have gotten in, but still the call on the field that he wasn't in. So I don't know how you overturn that when you really couldn't see much and kind of just the sea of humanity there on the 1-yard line. But either way, what's become an issue for this USC team, obviously the offensive line has been an issue for a while now, and I don't see it getting any better. But the bigger issue for me in this USC and this Lincoln Riley team, they've had multiple opportunities in Lincoln Riley's tenure to close out games. I just laid out 2 of them for you, and they cannot close out teams and close out games. And in the Big Ten, when these opponents are a little bit better, you're on the road, these environments are tougher. This isn't Arizona playing at Arizona. This isn't playing at Arizona State. This isn't playing at Colorado. Not to, diminish those environments, but they're not the same as some of these Big Ten environments. You have to be able to put away teams and closed them out. And Lincoln Riley and this USC team under his tenure in these last 3 years has not been able to do that. And their defense did not play great. This was the worst performance their defense has had all season for a whole game. They've had bad halves, but they've been able to come back in the second half and bounce back. They let Minnesota run all over them. There's a lot of missed tackles. So that was the worst performance by their defense, but their defense wasn't that terrible. The offense could only score 17 points against a 2-3 Minnesota team. That was not good. That was a little bit pathetic, I think. So question marks all around for this USC team. Another slow start. They didn't score. They didn't get in the end zone until the second quarter. I think it was actually 0-0 at the end of the first quarter. Another slow start. They had to get a 50-plus yard field goal to tie the game at 10 in the first half to go into halftime. So question marks all around this program. Questioning if Lincoln Riley is the guy, if his philosophy and how he coaches and plays and how his players play and how he coaches and his demeanor and his philosophy for this team is really built to win at a high level in college football, especially now in the Big Ten Conference. Huge question mark there. Huge game this week at home against number 3 Penn State. That's going to be a huge game. This is a must-win game for USC if they have any chance of getting into the playoffs and any kind of chance of salvaging the season that looked so promising after that Week 1 defeat of LSU. So big disappointment there, and a lot to get back to the drawing board for this USC team. Missouri, they got hammered on the road at Texas A&M. We don't need to get into it. They looked awful. They were fraudulent. They were never a top 10 team, and they finally got on the road and got hammered. That game was over midway through the second quarter, basically. So Texas A&M looks a lot better. They went with Connor Wegman instead of Marcel Reese, which was kind of an interesting decision, but he played really well. And they have a real good shot to get to a SEC championship game with their schedule and how they're playing right now. But this season has a little bit of a 2007 feel. And what I mean by that is, if anybody remembers the 2007 college football season, there was upsets galore. There was a ton of parity. There really wasn't a dominant number one team or a couple of teams where you're like, those guys are just better than the rest. That's what this season looks like. We have a handful of undefeated teams left. And a lot of them, and some of them play this weekend, so we'll even lose more undefeated teams going into this weekend. But I think it's wide open, and with that being the case, I think the college football 12-team playoff is going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. Can't wait for that to come around. It's going to be really great. A lot of good teams, a lot of just, no great teams, a lot of good teams, but a lot of teams kind of just stuck right there at the top. It's going to make for a really good 12-team college football playoff. Let's go ahead and move to the NFL real quick. And first thing I want to react from this weekend is the rookie quarterbacks are coming along. They're looking good. Caleb Williams had his best day for the Bears, threw for 300 yards again. He's done that twice now. Something Justin Fields didn't do is in his entire 3 years for the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams has already done in the first 5 games. They're 3-2, so the Bears are looking better too, and Caleb Williams is getting better week after week. Jayden Daniels and the Commanders have already looked great. They're 4-1. Jayden Daniels is probably kind of a dark horse MVP candidate at this point. He probably had his worst game of the season this weekend, but still was very good, and they got a win at home against the Cleveland Browns. So Jayden Daniels continues to look good. Like I said, probably his worst game of the year so far, but still played a really good game. And then Bo Nix. Bo Nix at home, they get the victory, and they hammer the Las Vegas Raiders. They moved to 3-2. He got better and better. He had made some really good throws, had a couple of touchdowns today. So rookie quarterbacks are coming along. They're getting it. They're looking like they were deserving of being top 10, 12 picks. So that was a big reaction I had from this weekend. Rookie quarterbacks are getting better. And then a couple of top-level contenders, or at least teams we thought were top-level contenders, had some heartbreaking losses this weekend. We're going to start off with the San Francisco 49ers. They had a 13-point lead at halftime. They led 23-10. They end up losing that game at home to the Arizona Cardinals. They fall to 2-3. And 2 of their losses out of the 3 are in division. And all 3 of their losses are in conference. So that's going to be a hole that they're going to have to climb out of. And this team, I don't understand what's going on with them a little bit. They have had some injuries and been banged up, but they had most of their guys back this week. They had the lead at home. You were in control. You're playing a team in Arizona who's not a great team coming from behind. They're a defense that you should be able to move up and down the field on, and you couldn't really move the ball that well in the second half. So question marks for the San Francisco 49ers team. I think they'll be okay, but 2-3 right now with 2 losses in division and 3 losses in conference is not a good place to be, of course, and they're going to have to turn it around quick. McCaffrey's not coming back anytime soon. Kittle's been in and out of the lineup. Debo's been in and out of the lineup. But you still are a better team than the Rams and the Cardinals, who you've lost to 2 out of the last 3 weeks. They got to right the ship here, or it's going to get real tough for them if they keep losing conference and division games. And then the Buffalo Bills. I wanted to kind of touch on this a little bit more. What the Buffalo Bills did to end the game on Sunday. Now, Josh Allen had an awful game. He was 9 of 30. He was getting hit all over the place. He looked rough. And that's kind of the Josh Allen experience. He's going to have games where he looks like he's no doubt the best player, best quarterback in the league. And then he's going to have games where, like, is this guy even top 10? This guy even top 15? Of course he is. But he has games, his floor is lower than than any other elite quarterback in this league. Now, his ceiling, you could argue, and I think it is higher than any elite quarterback in this league, but his floor is so much lower than guys like Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, so much lower than those guys, and those guys, I think, are the elite quarterbacks out there. And so every now and then you get a Josh Allen game that looked like yesterday, 9 of 30, couple turnovers, was just kind of just ugly, messy, kind of sporadic game. A lot of times you're going to get that. But let's talk about how they ended this game. So the Buffalo Bills got the ball with 32 seconds left in the game. They were inside their own 5-yard line. And I think the Texans had 2 timeouts left, 1 or 2 timeouts left. You're thinking, okay, you run the ball 3 times. We'll see if the Texans take their timeouts or you're going into overtime. No, that's not what the Bills did. They proceeded to throw the ball 3 straight times. And Josh Allen had a couple of throws where it's like, damn, that could have been intercepted, and you're going to set up Houston right there with the field goal to win the game. 3 straight times, they took maybe 10, 12 seconds off the clock, punted the ball away, punted out of their own end zone away to Houston. Houston was able to get the ball pretty much right at midfield, needed about 10, 12 yards to get into field goal range. They do that. They kick a 59-yard field goal, so they didn't get a lot of yardage. They kicked a 59-yard field goal by Kaimi Fairbairn to win the game. That game never should have gotten there. You run the ball all 3 times. I don't care if you're running it with Cook or you're running it with Josh Allen. You run the football. You take it into overtime. You're on your own. You're inside your own 5-yard line. The chances of you hitting a big play and getting into field goal range in 32 seconds are very, very slim. You cannot do that. I put that loss on Sean McDermott, Joe Brady, and Josh Allen. And I've heard a lot of pundits today talk about, okay, this is on McDermott and Brady and more on McDermott. Joe Brady is the offensive coordinator for the Bills, but Josh Allen is in his, 6th year in this league. He's smart enough to know, hey, why are we throwing the ball? We're not going to win the game here. We're not going to be able to get into field goal range from our own 5-yard line. Let me run the ball. Let me check to a run. Let me run on my own. Get the clock down, get this into overtime, and maybe we actually had the momentum in this game. Our defense was playing better, forced 2 turnovers recently against C.J. Stroud. Let's get the ball in overtime and win this game in overtime when we have a better opportunity. So I put it on all 3 of them. Terrible ending for this Buffalo Bills team. But like I said, this is the Josh Allen experience. Every now and then you're going to get a game where he looks mediocre and even worse than mediocre. And yes, Sean McDermott is getting killed today for that ending sequence. Joe Brady needs to get killed for that ending sequence, and Josh Allen needs to take some of that blame because he is a veteran quarterback. He is the leader of that team. He has the opportunity to check to a run or run the ball himself and get that game in overtime where they would have a better chance to win that game than what they did with 32 seconds left on their own 5-yard line. So terrible ending there. Terrible way to end, and that was just inexcusable by the Buffalo Bills, and now they're 3-2. After the first 3 weeks, they look like the best team in the league. Now it's like, who knows? And they got a game Monday night against the Jets. They need to win that game, especially for the division. They need to win that game. And then we'll finish with the Ravens and Bengals. What just an offensive masterpiece by the Ravens and Bengals. Joe Burrow had 5 touchdowns. Lamar Jackson had 4 touchdowns. They both have over 300 yards passing. Goes into overtime. Lamar Jackson fumbles the football in overtime. He looked away on a snap, and he just dropped it. The Bengals recover it, and they're not exactly in field goal range. It's kind of like borderline field goal range. What do? They run the ball 3 straight times. Your quarterback has 5 touchdown passes. You have 2 wide receivers over 100 yards receiving. Your quarterback and this passing game is lit up Baltimore all not all day long. And what do? You run the ball 3 times, and then you settle for a 53-yard field goal. Your holder drops the snap, so he gets a late setup for McPherson. He shanks it to the left. Boom. Ball goes to the Baltimore Ravens. 2 plays later, they're in field goal range after a long run from Derrick Henry, and they win the game. And I just put it on McDermott, Brady, and Josh Allen for the Buffalo game. This game goes on Zach Taylor. Now, I know Burrow had kind of a rough interception at the end of the fourth quarter that gave the Ravens back the ball for a chance to tie the game. But still, this is on Zach Taylor. You have a quarterback who's one of the best quarterbacks in the entire league who is humming. He is playing outside of his mind. 5 touchdowns. You're torching them with Chase and Higgins all day long. And you decide to run the ball 3 times? That's not what you do. You're not a running team. You run the ball okay with Chase Brown and Zach Moss. You're a passing team with Joe freaking Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Throw the ball. If it's incomplete or whatever, then you can kick the field goal. But go down swinging with what got you there. Go down swinging with your best attribute, and that is Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins in that passing game. To run the ball 3 times and settle for a 53-yard field goal, and I hate these coaches that settle for field goals. Get the ball in the damn end zone. Leave no doubt. Get the ball in the end zone. Don't leave the game in the hands of a freaking kicker. Get the ball in the end zone, leave no doubt, or at least get them a chip shot where they're in range and you know they're going to make the field goal. So I put that on Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor, inexcusable loss for the Bengals there. They've scored 38 points and 35 points in 2 of the last 3 weeks and lost both those games. Their defense is absolutely atrocious. But you had an opportunity. You had multiple opportunities to win this game, and you blew it. They're now 1-4, and it's going to be an uphill battle. They have an easier schedule, yes. It is going to be an uphill battle to just get back to 500, and you could forget about playoffs right now. Just focus on this week if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. But so that has been my reaction both in college football and the NFL. Crazy results, crazy games, crazy weekend in both sports. Love it. Can't wait for this weekend to watch it all again. Some huge matchups in college football this weekend. This was kind of the weekend circled by everybody as the biggest weekend of the year as far as matchups go. Huge matchups in college football. Huge matchups in the NFL. Going to be another great weekend. Thank you for always watching and listening. Again, if you like the video version, it is right here on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment with some of your reactions to some of the craziness this past weekend as well. If you prefer the audio version, please like and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to your podcast, Amazon, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to it. But thank you again for watching and listening, and have a great day.